Kia ora, everyone. I am Mike Crudge. I'm at the Baptist National Support Centre. Welcome to this episode of Chair Chats. This is where we have a brief conversation with the chairperson of our National Council. So for Baptists, we have an elected group of people called National Council. It used to be called Assembly Council until last year, and they meet between our national hui on our behalf, basically. And today we have the chair, Rod Robson. Kia ora, Rod.
Hey, Mike, how are you?
So, Rod, I know National Council met a couple of weeks ago, and you're going to give us another little update based on that meeting and other things that are going on. So, have you got a story to tell us about? Like, how's your vertigo?
Yeah, it was a 2-day wonder, and I've been okay ever since. So I'm grateful for that because it was not a fun experience.
Well, that's good. Good that that's resolved. Prayers answered.
Well, my story I want to tell you today, actually I've got a couple of stories. Okay. And they're from the Lower North Island hui where I was last week. And for some reason, I ended up on the youth pastor's table, which was kind of fun. I was probably 3 times as old as most of them, but it was still a good time had by all as a washed-up youth pastor.
You were a youth pastor once, weren't you?
I was, a long time ago. Yeah, loved it, had a great time. But anyway, I was talking to this guy, youth pastor, and he got rung by this person, mother, and said, my son would like to meet with you to talk about baptism. He didn't know the mother and he didn't know the son. And he thought, oh, this is probably someone wanting a signature to get into a Christian school, something like that. So anyway, he met with this boy, and this, I think, 14-year-old had been watching YouTube and had come across some Christian testimonies. And based on those testimonies, he'd started reading the Bible, enthralled by it, and he wanted to follow Jesus and get baptized. No Christian heritage, no nothing, no prior involvement in any sort of church or youth group. And I thought, man, that's exciting. And there were a lot of stories like that. Another one of a church where they'd had a fairly substantial Māori community quite close by that the youth ministry never really had got very far with. So, of the youth group, quite a big youth group, 40-odd, in the college age, one was Māori. Nowadays, the intermediate group is about the same size and over 2/3 are Māori. And it's just nothing the church has done, nothing the youth people have done. It's just come from the outside. God is doing some interesting stuff out there in youth land, and that was just fantastic. So I'm telling everyone I come across about this story, so you're included.
Oh, excellent. And our listeners will appreciate those stories too.
Okay, so we met a couple of weeks ago. Probably the big things that I'm seeing happening is our new Kerry principal, Paul Jones, and his family are now in the country. And next week, on the 23rd or so, which might be this week, depending on when you listen to this podcast, he will be starting in his new role at Kerry College. And I just wanted to give him a shout out and say welcome, and we're really pleased to have you as part of us. So that was one thing. The other thing was the Lower North Island Association have come up with a new way of doing associating. They are now not going to have a regional board. They are going to have a sort of a missions and ministry crew, a regional leader who reports solely to the National Council, and they're going to do their thing that way. And that's a really interesting development because we haven't had different ways of doing this. And I'm intrigued to see how that pans out. We're still in the process of figuring out how that's going to work. But there was a really good tone and a really good feeling at that meeting. So, that's an answer to prayer, I reckon.
We've this week published an article about that. So some people, Andrew Baldwin wrote about the Lower North Island Baptist Association report that happened, and that report and all 38 pages of it are on baptist.nz in the article called Better Together, Revitalising the Lower North Island Baptist Association.
Yeah, it's a big read, but it's a worthwhile read if you're involved in wider leadership in our movement, definitely. And the other thing I wanted to talk about was to just give you an update on where the national leader search process is at. Applications close on the 24th of this month. And probably in a few weeks' time, Ruby Duncan, who is chairing that search committee, will do a podcast to fill you in on where things are up to. But the idea is that they will be doing their interviewing and their discerning in July, and will bring a name to the National Council meeting on the 1st of August, ideally. Then during August, there'll be an engagement with that person, with various groups around the movement, and to sort of, I guess, really do our discernment properly, with the plan being that we would advise the movement of who that person is and why we're bringing that name in September. So I'm really set a minimum of, it's got to be at least 6 weeks before Hui, where we'll be voting, ideally 8. But we'll see how we go, but a good chunk of time. And one of the cool privileges I have is I see the applications as they're coming in. And I was asked at the Lower North Island Hui, would we get someone who was merely good, or, what were the prospects of getting someone who was really terrific? And I said, well, I'm seeing 3 or 4 really strong applicants. So feeling pretty good about that. Now, I don't know who's going to come through, and that's a question of discernment, not just CVs and all the rest of it. But yeah, it looks good to me.
So the panel that Ruby Duncan is leading, they will do the work on our behalf to come up with one name that you've mentioned will be out 6 to 8 weeks before our national Hui in November. What do local churches need to do in that 6 to 8 weeks' time, continuing on in this process?
I think during that 6 to 8 weeks, it's to read fairly carefully what gets put out, because we will be putting out this is the person, this is who they are, this is what they've done, here's why we think they are a good fit for what we're looking for in terms of their experience and their character and all the rest of it. And it's a little bit like in a church scenario, you can't have a panel, a core committee of 300 churches or 240 churches. You've got to some extent, trust the people doing the mahi, that they've got it right. But it's just to sort of prayerfully sit with what's been said and listen to the person, and we'll get a podcast or 2 out of them, I would imagine. And then think before God, is this the person that we would want to lead our movement? And I think it's, I was asked, another thing I was asked at Lower North was, would we be putting out detailed theological positions from this person about what they think about various things? And the answer to that is actually no, we won't. We're not looking for someone to lead us into all being of one mind on 2nd or 3rd tier questions. What we're hoping that they will do is that they will help us come together despite our differences and relate well, associate well, and dig down into the things that we agree on. So actually, it doesn't matter to me that much, within broad parameters, what that person thinks about particular issues.
Okay, that's good. Good bit of
All
information. Right. If people want to see who is in that search group for the national leader, there was an article published on Baptist.nz on the app or the website on the 5th of May, and it details who those people are and whereabouts they are in the country, and a few other things about the process so far. So that was a bit of an update on top of your last Chair Chats, which was the first, and this one. And there'll be, as you said, another one in a few weeks' time, hopefully with Ruby Duncan, who's leading that group. Maybe we'll even get the name in that last 6 to 8 weeks that the person can talk with you on this Chair Chats update.
Yeah, I think that would be ideal. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Rod. And signing out.